So apparently I'm live. I'm thinking so, hoping so. Not sure if I am or not. Hi, I'm Bankslayer, and just thought I'd do another chat. I am going to have to change the time because this time of night doesn't really suit us for many reasons. So I will come up with a better time. It's really hard for me to find a time because I'm exhausted all the time. And I thought this would be a really good time to be doing it because everything's settled and, I've had the time during the day to do whatever, to prepare. And it's just not working out for me. It's just a bit difficult. But what I wanted to talk about today is the continuing saga of this barrister brief I'm doing. And I spent many hours today going through all of the document folders. So as I said, there's about 20 and while they've got separators in them, they're not labelled, there's no index. So you literally have to go through every document to see, what it is. And I sort of thought I would, because I phoned the guy that I'm doing this for, and I sort of said, have you got the documents, another copy I could have once I've taken these out? He said, yep, not a problem, got plenty of copies. Because normally I'd be putting together the electronic file, but I've got just the small home printer scanner. So if I were to try to scan all of the documents myself, I think I'd be here for 3 or 4 weeks. And I don't even have that many documents. It's just that a lot of them are very, very long. One of them is 600 pages. That's the transcripts that I need to put into the file so that if the barrister wants to read a bit more about some of the things that have come up in the trial as it relates to the matter at hand, he's at least got it and he can sort of say, oh, okay, so that's what this means. I doubt he'll do it, but I think it's better to give those documents to him and let him make up his own mind rather than me not putting it in there and then he has to think, do I want to ask for it? Just my way of looking at it. I could be wrong. It's, I wouldn't say that I'm always right with everything. So what I did today, and I'll just have a schluck of water. So what I was doing is, as I was going through these document files, I had to read a little bit about what's in the document and is it something that's on point for the opinion I need, so that, the lawyer can then work with things and, we put it all together. And that's what took most of the time. It was reading through, even though I was just glancing through the documents, it was, how does it fit into the chronology? Where in the file does it have to be? How do I refer it to it? Do I have to, what do I need out of it? So once I identified the documents, and as I say, these files are organised by somebody who was filing documents to keep them safe, not filing documents for a purpose. So even though the emails with attachments no longer had the attachments to them, I wasn't after the emails, I was more after the attachments. And then it was really hard to find some of the documents, like you had documents filed with a court where I found so many of the drafts that weren't signed, obviously didn't have the stamp of the court on them. So that's not what I what I need to give to the barrister, because they're draft documents, they tend to change, so I don't know what the changes were. And I didn't find all of the filed documents. And because I'm not practicing and, I'm not a solicitor on record, I can't just go online, look up the case and download the documents that are missing. This would be relatively straightforward if I were working as a lawyer. It's really easy. You just go into the database and grab what you need. So I went through each file looking through the documents, and I hope that I haven't missed any. I'm pretty sure I haven't. Just to find all of the relevant documents, and I made notes as I was going as to what questions arise with some of these documents. Some of them were because there was a court case before. Through that court case, this bloke got discovery, so he ended up getting lots of documents. He had access to so much, and he took copies of them. And one of the things, and it really surprised me when I saw them, is he has lots of work product where, they're talking about how things go. I don't think he would have gotten everything, but he got a fair bit. And it's all relevant in, what discussions took place. What did the people talk about? Who was at meetings? You need to know who was at meetings because, were those people supposed to be at the meetings, or, might there have been a nefarious reason why they were there? So I'm going through all of these, and of course with reading each document you get so many questions. So I just took a note of all of the questions, like, some of them talked about ownership of certain property and, like even 10% of a company. That's, he's never talked about his 10% in this company that the other side says he has. So what's happened? So I'm kind of going through all of these documents and I'm putting them into neat piles for, the type of document they are. Are they correspondence? Are they court documents, court orders? What documents have been filed with the court? There's miscellaneous ones, so obviously the court transcript goes under the miscellaneous. I could put it under the court documents. I might yet change it. I haven't committed to anything at this stage. The reason why I'm thinking as miscellaneous at the moment is because it'll sit at the end of the file. So I've already got 2 big lever arch files full of documents, and I've had to juggle the order of some of the documents because there's a couple of reports that are really substantial reports. One of them sits an inch thick. So, and the trial documents are, like the trial transcript is about that thick as well. So they kind of have to sit in their own file. And you can do that when you're instructing counsel. You can play with the order where you put things depending on, what's the best way to set this up. And I made a judgment call that the reason why my starting point, and I'd already done a draft brief, so I knew what documents I needed to find. I sort of know what case I want to make, what questions I want to ask from the barrister. So I had that as broad strokes. But before you can finalise it, and before you spend time, formatting and doing it all pretty and getting all the words right, you really want to make sure that you've got the documents. Because if you don't have the documents that you can get the barrister to read when you're asking a question, you sort of, it's not going to go very far. It's just frustrating all around. So I knew what documents I was broadly looking for, and then I knew that I would find other documents that would raise more questions. So my process, like this week, was, well, I'm going to keep thinking about it, because it's really good to really wrap your head around it and look through the files and just think about how I want to organise the documents. And then this morning I got up and I actually went through, got the documents out that I needed, and then I've spent the afternoon putting together the index. I can put together the index because it's just which order do they need to be in, and then it's, what kind of documents do you need up front, and, what tab are they under, and then each document as you put it into the index. If it's in date order, then you just follow the date order and you number them 1 through to whatever. And then once I've finished doing that, so I didn't quite get it done because my lovely next door neighbours have been welding and cutting and carrying on like they're a freaking industrial workshop again. And it's what, we're on day 4 and I'm having a nervous breakdown. I really want to go and smack them. Never mind. I'll behave myself. I haven't gone over to Inge, so that's all right. But I ended up with the biggest headache, and because I've ended up shutting the roller blind. I've closed all the doors, trying to keep the noise out, and it's just driving me nuts. So I've done it, almost finished. I ended up having to order some more numbered tabs so that I can, because I ended up with a lot more documents than I thought I would. I actually found some really good documents, so I thought, no, I'm gonna put them in there because they raise so many more questions. And then you can ask the barrister, which of these documents give rise to a cause of action? What's actionable for this guy? If this isn't going to go anywhere, which I suspect what we're working on is a moot point. So then how does he get justice? Does everything that we've got, all of the information we've got, show something that I haven't even thought of? Who's the right party that we can actually, get some redress from for this guy? So tomorrow, because I've got all of the documents, I've got a Word document that's got the table in it. I will print that out because I like to work from a printed copy, and then I'm going to put together the chronology from that. And in the chronology, what happened, what's the document, and where is it located in the file. So, you start doing the cross-referencing there, and then I'll pretty up the barrister brief, because I've already done the outline on it, and I've got, all of my headings done, and I've put a little bit of the information into the right area. I can then go in and I can, write a really concise brief that sort of explains what's happened, and then the questions naturally lead on from that. And then I can cross-reference the chronology in the documents. It'll be really easy to do. And, the chronology sits there after the barrister's instructions is where I'll probably put them. I don't think I'll put them right up front. Doing it this way, in my opinion, is better than the way that I've seen other people do them. I've seen other people do the barrister's brief by writing everything out and just putting a note as to which document. And then it turns out it wasn't that document. And then you still have to put together the barrister's brief, the document file. And then you're still doing all of that anyway. So the way that I've done it today, it's actually, as I'm getting the documents, I'm putting the tabs on. And tomorrow when I get the bigger packet of tabs, all I have to do is actually replace the ones I've got and I'll be fine. And I've put tabs in for the ones that I haven't quite finished yet, upside down, and where I've run out of the proper numbered tabs, so I'll be able to just, they're in order, they're in the order they are in the electronic document, and it'll be fine. It'll be really quick. And doing it that way means that I then, when I write out everything for the lawyer, I'll be following the chronology. And that's essentially what I need to do. I need to follow the chronology and have the correct reference to where things are. And because the documents are sorted by tabs, it doesn't really matter that, some of your documents are earlier in the index than, some of the ones you're using. But sometimes you get a bit confused if you're trying to do it all the other way, because you're still struggling to find labels and whatnot. So at this early stage, I find it easier not to label documents themselves as something different. Once you get to trial, that changes. They end up having, because the court gives you, you all get together and so that you're talking about the same document. It'll be given a document number. So it's all pretty straightforward after that. But that's what I've been up to today. I find it really easy doing it this way because it means I've thought about how I want to do it, and before I start writing, I actually make sure that the documents do say what I think they say, what I seem to remember they said. And there's actually a couple where at first when, this guy was talking me through all of this stuff and, it was all overwhelming and there was so much information that it didn't all sink in. And now I've got the documents showing what happened when and what other people have been officially told. And it all tells a very, very scary story. And, I would consider that fraud was involved, but we'll see how we go. So that's what I want to talk about with this. Ooh. Let me just see if I can see. Oh, keep an eye on all of this. I probably can't. Oh, my baby's at the door. So, no. That isn't what I wanted to do. But yeah, so it's all quite interesting, really. I think this was my favourite part of the job, just putting together a brief, putting it all together. One of the frustrating things that I experienced when I was working was if you were given a file and, told to sort of write a synopsis, and there weren't any file notes, and no file notes, no memos, no note of what needed to be done, and the file looked like somebody dropped it and everything was out of order and they just scooped up all the papers and put them in and didn't worry about what's there. That's not how I organise things, so I like organising things. And I don't even have OCD. If you looked at my desk right now, you'd say, oh, she's a genius like Einstein. It's like, only because Einstein's desk was a bit messy. Well, very messy, and I can do that really well. And that's my claim to fame on the old intelligence. But look, I think it's really important to have your documents in order. If you're going to give your lawyer any documents, can I suggest you actually spend the time and you get together an index. and you put the index at the front of each file of documents you've got. And you can put in a separator so that once one file's full, you put in the, continued in file 2, and then the index just sort of continues on in file 2. And if you can do that, that just makes it so easy for a lawyer who's trying to get on top of it to get there really quickly, because they can read the index and they can see that in this bit you've got all of your court documents. So what's this case up to in court? They can check the last date when something was filed. They can check everything. Now, if you're going to do a document file for your records, it's a little bit different to doing it for a barrister's brief, or if you were putting it together to show the lawyer what the documents are that you've got. And, if you're going to put together the documents for your lawyer, it's probably a good idea to put the earliest documents at the back of the file and then work your way up so that when the lawyer opens up the file, the latest document is up the top, so that it's always easier to add documents to the top of a file. And that way, if you only need to know 3 months worth of history on it, you don't have to go all the way through the documents. And it's really easy to update your index then, because you're doing it by date and document filed. And that's where it's different to a barrister brief, because the barrister brief works it works differently. So you can do it the most recent document first, but it's much easier to, once you've got them chunked, to leave them in order. That way you can start with the earliest down to the latest. You can always, if it's bank statements, what is it you need out of them? So it's just different ways of doing things. And as long as it's organised and you've got an index, I think people can cope with it. You don't really have to stress about it being perfect. Just identify the documents and do the cross-referencing if you're going to talk about things. Like if you're going to write a letter for your lawyer and you know that they've got the file, if you've organised a really good file, they won't take it apart because it's time they don't have to spend. If you give them a box of documents, you might be talking at cross purposes. So, I'm not a fan of people handing over boxes of documents that aren't sorted. And there's a very simple reason for that. It's because it takes so much time for someone to put them into files, to add the index, and do all of this stuff. And guess who pays for it? You're going to pay for it. And if they get the secretary or receptionist to do this job, because, they happen to have a moment, they can do it, that's still a lot of money you're being charged for it. And that is just putting documents into some sort of order. And there's a format for it that each law firm has. But if you've already done the index, especially if you've got an electronic index as well, then there's not that much work that they have to do, especially not if you've organised your documents. It's hell of a lot cheaper than just taking the old box of documents in there. It's a good way to be organised, and if you're not organised enough to do that, then can I suggest you at least have a go? It helps you to wrap your head around what's going on, and I know it's stressful doing it. Been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. Just have a go. A half-assed attempt is still better than just, I can't be bothered, here you go. I know a few people have got their kids who are doing, they're doing the old secretarial courses or whatever. Well, they're messing around with Excel spreadsheets, learning how to do tables in Word. They ask them to do it. Come on, I'll give you a bit of pocket money. We do it together. You help me. You do the electronic stuff and I'll tell you what everything is. And it gets done. It's a job, needs to be done. Someone needs to do it. I reckon you should do it. If you've got something in front of the court, at least then you know what you've got. And you'll be able to pick if there's any documents missing. Once you know they're missing, you can find them. It's, if there's bank statements missing, you can go onto online banking and download the missing statements. It's easy enough to do. So my personal recommendation is to do that. And as I said yesterday, just write your own little description. You write your story as simply as you can without going over the same ground twice. I find that a lot of people, and this isn't just about legal things, this is about everything, they're so invested in their story, and everybody's got a past when they tell their story, and it's the past of having previously told their story and people have absolutely missed the point, or they absolutely haven't understood something that's crucial to the story, or, they just didn't hear it. So by the time they've told it to the 15th person, they're starting to say the bits that the other people haven't heard before over and over. And sometimes it's like they're stuck in a loop. I know because I was there. I did that because you're trying to wrap your head around how this can possibly happen. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like, how the hell did I end up in a place where I've got to go to court? Well, how the hell does that happen? Shouldn't happen. Why did it happen? So you're kind of going through this loopy thing, and you just, when you write out your story, short circuit the loops. Make sure everything's in there once. I can't believe that the bank manager did XYZ. Say it once. Don't do what I did, going over and over and over, like, how the hell? Why? What? No one does that. Except apparently it's a lot of bank managers do it, have done it for a long time. Who knew? So we've got all of that. What else can I tell you? There's lots of things, lots of little things that you can do for yourself that makes the process easier for you, makes it better for you to understand your story. I mean, I can talk a little bit about the nuts and bolts of writing something. Like, it's always really good to, once you've got all of your documents together, say you might have some emails from the very beginning when you started talking to the bank manager or whatever about this loan, and then you'll have that loan application, you'll have this, you'll have that, and you can put all of these documents together, and you'll need all of your bank statements, and you'll need all sorts of things, and then you can start looking through them. And as you're reading them, getting ready to file them, and put the index together, you write down what each document sort of shows up. Like, is there something in the loan application form that seems odd? Like, you hadn't really noticed it before. I don't know. Were you in trouble as soon as you started having to repay the loan? A lot of the reasons why people weren't picking up that they couldn't actually afford the loans that they had is because the bank actually lent them more than they needed, and then they put it into an account that was essentially locked, and that's where the repayments came back from. So it wasn't until that money was gone that they realised, well, we never had the money to be able to repay that, so why would the bank have given us a loan? And everybody says, but you've had the loan for 3 years. Yeah, but, they're locked into a really low rate loan, and then after 3 years this phenomenal interest rate kicks in, and they didn't realise that it was so marginal that they could never have repaid it at the normal interest rate. But these are the kinds of things that you don't know to look for. I mean, how could you? Why? Why would you? Why would you think anybody would do that? But that's neither here nor there. This is just some of the things you might notice when you're looking through the documents. You might be reading a whole email chain, and you might realise that you kept asking questions, and with each return email your questions weren't answered. It was like glossed over. So what's that all about? Make a note of it. When you then use your index to put together your chronology, on your chronology you might put, and in this email I asked so-and-so what XYZ means. And then, the return email, I note that my question wasn't answered, and then a question wasn't answered. And once you've got your chronology done, and you've written out the critical things like who said what promises were made, what figures were bandied about, what projections were made, blah, 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 whatever. Or, when I spoke to so-and-so that seemed to be of the opinion that, this is really easy, or you'll get it, not a problem. It's an opportunity you shouldn't waste. Put that into the chronology bit so that from the chronology you're going to write your story, and you're going to write it really simply. And if you're referring to facts and figures that were in any of the documents that you've covered, refer to those documents. Like, write your paragraph about whatever it was, and then, see document whatever it was, like a bank statement at tab E, it was index number 15 or something, I don't know. Probably be 55 at that stage. But if you can do that, if you can tell your story and cross-reference to the documents, then you know your story and you know what you've got. And then when you talk to a lawyer, you can easily tell them what happened when and what the significance of some of the documents are. I just think it's a better way to go. Having been at both sides of this equation, I would encourage everybody who's got to go to court to know what they're on about. The top-end law firms representing the big end of town knows that legal expenses are over the top. They negotiate a reasonable set of fees, I guess. I think everybody tightens their belt, but they can afford a heck of a lot more than you can. So, you go with and do the best thing that you can for yourself so that your lawyer doesn't have to spend a lot of time looking for documents. If they end up losing documents and having to find them all, then I suggest you might want a different lawyer, only because it kind of drives me nuts. I think, keep a copy of your files at home with your index in there. As new documents come up, you can update the index and put them into the right spot, or you can start a new file with a new index that lists whatever's happened with that law firm, like what, all of the correspondence, keep a separate folder for your interactions with the law firm. Invoices, you want your engagement letter, you want to keep your contract with the law firm, you want to keep their charges, you want to keep the scale of costs. You really want to keep everything that the law firm is doing in a separate folder. You want to keep that organised. One of the things that drives me nuts about the retainer. So the retainer is when you engage a lawyer and you pay them money to represent you. And there's a retainer document that sets out the scope of the work that they're going to do for you. Like they will have to limit what they do for how much money. They'll give you a ballpark figure. They might say, look, it's going to cost you $10,000, give or take a bit, to get to this stage in the proceedings. And then we'll have to discuss, because, if we manage to get it settled, that's all your costs. And of course, a lot of them will say, if you're going to go all the way to trial, it's going to cost you a couple of $100,000 at least, because that's how expensive it is. But you want to keep all of those documents. And I lost my train of thought there for a second. And the reason it drives me nuts is because in your retainer document that you've got from a lawyer, there will be a clause saying, get a legal opinion on this retainer document. And it's like, how many legal opinions are you going to need for this? Because the next lawyer you go to, can you read this legal agreement for me? It's basically stock standard. There's only a few things that would be changed according to your matter. And the next lawyer's going to say, well, before I give you an actual legal opinion, maybe you need to throw some money at me and give you... And you're sort of stuck in this roundabout thing. It's like, nah, I don't like it. If you can't trust your lawyer to give you a decent retainer agreement, then I think there's a problem with the legal profession. And I know it's just stock standard, but it drives me nuts. I don't like it. So I like this idea of getting a legal opinion on the legal opinion you've just obtained, and then you need to get a legal opinion on the legal opinion on the legal opinion that you've obtained. It's just never ending, really. But I would recommend that if you're going to see a lawyer, that you keep all the documents. You make sure you've got a folder where you've got your retainer, you've got your engagement letter, you've got your written advice. If they're going to give you a written advice, you keep the written advice in that folder. Every invoice, file the invoices. Read the invoices. I didn't read my invoices. I was so stressed with everything that was happening. We paid cash on a few things, and I swear to God that hasn't shown up on some of those invoices. I know how much cash I had, and I know how much cash I paid, and yes, we were given receipts, but I don't think it showed up on the invoices. And I hate the way some of the legal accounting programs do the invoices. It's really hard to stay on top of it. Some of them are really good, and some of them you sort of think, I've got no idea what's going on here. So, just read the documents. Make sure that you're not being charged for stupid things like I was. Mind you, in my defence, the really stupid invoice didn't show up until after we were in exile in Perth. So I'm sort of thinking that one wasn't my fault. And I did read it, and I phoned up the Legal Profession Complaints Committee immediately that I found that, because it just was not good. So keep all of those documents and keep an invoice with them, and start your chronology. Just start with day one, went and saw so-and-so for advice. You know, they said, you know, they indicated maybe, you know, we've got a case, but, you know, I need to give them more documents, or, you know, they're going to write a letter to the other side, blah, 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 blah. And then every time something happens, put it into the chronology. Because if you end up having an argument over costs, if something goes wrong, if they drop the ball, if you think they were negligent and they owe you, I mean, if you think that your lawyer was an incompetent fool who's cost you everything and just skimmed money off you because they could, how are you going to prove it? You know, just keep your records. Nowadays, if people talk to me about, you know, well, what do you do about getting a bank loan? You keep every document, every telephone conversation, everything you sign, have a copy of everything. Just, you start a file and you do the same thing, and you keep your chronology, you keep everything the way that you would if you needed to put it together at the end. And one of the things I say to people is, don't have your big savings, like if you've got $10,000 or more dollars that you want to keep safe, don't keep that in the bank account where you have your mortgage. We've actually got two different banks. So we've got our day-to-day banking with one, and we've got the mortgage with another bank, and we've got 6 months worth of repayments sitting in that account, so that if anything happens, I reckon that, you know, if push came to shove and it looked like we were going to be destitute, that would give us a buffer to actually be able to sell the place at our convenience rather than, you know, things getting really bad. But I would never ever have my day-to-day banking with the bank that's got the mortgage. Never again. We'll never do that again. I mean, we have the wages go into the one bank account, and before we even see the money, there's a transfer out to the other bank to cover the mortgage. It's how I'd recommend doing that. And the reason I say that is because we were screwed over by our bank. It was Christmas Eve. Hadn't done any Christmas shopping yet because we like to keep our Christmas shopping to the last day or so before Christmas. My hubby was working. We didn't get to go shopping. We'd planned to go to Perth on the Saturday. So it was the 23rd. It was just before Christmas. And I think Monday was Christmas Eve. So this was Saturday morning. I went to pay for some milk and some bread, and all my accounts bounced. But I was lucky that I'd kept the old bank account open. So I had my savings account and I had a bit of money in that, so I could pay for all my shopping. Got home, got onto online banking, and they'd frozen all our accounts. And it was Monday, that was Christmas Eve, and we were going to be paid on Monday afternoon. And I thought, if that money goes into our normal account, then we're going to have nothing for Christmas. Nothing at all. I mean, they'd frozen the credit cards, they'd frozen everything. And I only had my savings account with the other bank, and there wasn't much money in it. So I phoned my husband and said, can you get a hold of the pay girls to see if they can fix that for us? And he said, well, it's got to wait until Monday. So on the Monday morning, he phoned Sydney early and got a talk to a payroll, and they said, oh yeah, just, you know, get all of the details across to us and we'll make sure that it goes through properly. And you know what? They actually paid that money. 3 hours later, we had to pay sitting in a bank account that we could actually use. So for me, don't have your money go into the bank that's got, control of your mortgage and, has all the rights in the world. I knew one woman who was talking to me. She had $11 million worth of assets. She owned, one of the buildings she owned was an apartment complex, and she put aside $800,000 into a savings account, an investment savings account, that was for the purpose of paying back the loan, because she knew that she had to, as the apartments became empty, she had to fix all of them up. And she knew that at one stage, I think it was 5 apartments were going to be empty and getting refurbished at the same time. So she had the money sitting in the bank ready to go to pay that. The bank knew it, and then they decided to pull the rug out from under her, and they froze the account with the $800,000 in it and said, oh, you're destitute. They sold all of her property for, I think they ended up selling everything for $4 million and sent her bankrupt. I mean, how the hell does that happen? Come on, fair suck of the sav. And don't tell me it doesn't happen. It does. Watch some of the Royal Commission stuff. Read the numerous inquiries that we've had into banking in Australia. It's shocking. Absolutely. They're mongrels. They really are. Anyway, I know that I haven't done an hour yet, but I've still got this headache. It's just not getting any easier. So I'm going to love you and leave you. I think I've pretty much covered everything that I wanted to today, because it's just get on top of your stuff. If you're watching this just out of curiosity and you haven't been in any trouble, can I suggest you start keeping a diary? Even if it's just one of those, normal little diaries, and you just sort of make note of the big things in life. Keep a chronology of your documents. Keep different files for different projects. If you're spending money on something, keep a file. I can tell you that my husband can tell me how much each crayfish that we have costs, because he's done the costing on everything. I think we're now down to $500 a pop or something, because we haven't caught many of them. But I think that includes a fair few costs. So we will get there. But anyway, that's it. Just stay on top of your story. If there's anything that you want to know, leave a comment. Let me know if there's any particular things that you would like me to talk about. Obviously, I can't give legal advice. And if you need legal advice, you really need to go and see a lawyer, because everybody's story is different. You can't phone up a television lawyer and say, oh, can you tell me this? Because they can't. And when lawyers are on the radio, they can only give you general ballpark advice. Everybody's circumstances are different, so you really need to see someone. If you found it interesting or helpful, like it, share it, subscribe. I'm trying to get something happening so that people don't start doing the Freeman of the Land arguments. So I probably will start talking about that a bit, just so that you can identify what it actually is. I'm going to leave it at that, because I'm starting to really and ah, and I don't like it. Do not like it at all. Have a great night. I'll catch